They told me I was overreacting. They said my son was being dramatic. They smiled at me with that condescending sympathy reserved for mothers who just can't handle their sensitive children. And for months, I almost believed them. Almost. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I proved them all wrong, burned their reputations to ash, and got justice for my 12-year-old son, Marcus. But to understand why this matters so much, you need to understand who my son is. Marcus has always been different. Not in a bad way, never in a bad way. He's brilliant, actually. The kind of kid who reads encyclopedia entries for fun and can tell you the entire history of the Roman Empire before breakfast. He's also quiet. Thoughtful. The type of child who feels everything deeply, who notices when someone's hurting, who brings home injured birds and nurses them back to health in shoeboxes lined with soft cloth. He's gentle. And apparently, in 2024, that's still something people punish you for. It started in September, 3 months into 7th grade. Marcus came home with his shirt torn. Not ripped, torn, like someone had grabbed it and yanked hard enough to stretch the collar completely out of shape. His face was pale, that scary kind of pale where you know your kid is holding back tears through sheer force of will. What happened? I asked, my stomach already dropping. Nothing, Mom. I snagged it on my locker. Even then, I knew he was lying. Marcus is a terrible liar. His left eye twitches when he's not telling the truth, has since he was 5. But I didn't push. Not that first time. I should have. God, I should have. The incidents kept happening. A lost lunch that left him starving by 3 p.m. Homework mysteriously destroyed, covered in what looked like shoe prints. Bruises on his arms that he explained away as clumsiness during gym class. Each time, I'd ask. Each time, he'd give me that same hollow look and a practiced excuse. I reached out to his teacher, Mrs. Peterson, a woman in her 50s with the kind of tight smile that never reaches her eyes. "Oh, Marcus," she said with a little laugh when I called her after school one day. "He's a bit sensitive, isn't he? 7th grade is tough for kids who are different. I think he's just struggling with the social adjustment. Boys this age can be rough, but it's all part of growing up." Sensitive. That word. I heard it again when I spoke to the vice principal, Mr. Chin. Marcus is a sweet kid, Mrs. Morrison, but he does tend to be a bit dramatic about things. We haven't witnessed any bullying. Have you considered that maybe he's seeking attention? Sometimes kids go through phases. Dramatic. Attention-seeking. Sensitive. They were gaslighting me. Gaslighting us. And the worst part? I started to doubt myself. I started looking at my son and wondering if maybe I was being an overprotective mother, if maybe I was projecting my own fears onto normal middle school social dynamics. Marcus got quieter. He stopped talking about school entirely. He'd come home, go straight to his room, and I'd hear nothing but silence for hours. No music. No video games. Just silence, which is somehow worse than crying because at least crying means they're still fighting. One night in late October, I found him sitting on his bedroom floor in the dark, his back against the bed, knees pulled up to his chest. The moonlight coming through his window cast shadows across his face, and I could see the tear tracks on his cheeks. "Baby," I whispered, sitting down next to him. "Talk to me. Please." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in the small, broken voice I'd never heard from him before, he said, "Mom, do you think there's something wrong with me?" My heart shattered. Actually felt like it cracked in half inside my chest. "No. Marcus, no. There is nothing wrong with you. Not one single thing. Then why do they hate me so much?" I held him while he cried. Really cried, the kind of crying where you can't catch your breath. And I made a decision right then. I was done listening to people who didn't see what I saw. I was done being reasonable. The next morning, I marched into that school and demanded a meeting with the principal, Mrs. Rodriguez. I brought documentation, photos of the bruises, the torn clothes, a log I'd started keeping of every incident. I was prepared for a fight. Mrs. Rodriguez was professional, I'll give her that. She listened, nodded in all the right places, and promised to look into it. She assigned a guidance counselor to check in with Marcus. She said they'd monitor the situation. But nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. Because now Marcus wasn't just being bullied, he was being labeled as a troublemaker for making accusations. The other kids knew. And kids can be vicious when they sense vulnerability. By November, Marcus was having panic attacks before school. Real, gasping for air, chest-tightening panic attacks. I took him to our pediatrician, who gently suggested therapy. We started going twice a week. I felt like I was failing him. Like I was sending my lamb back to wolves every single day and just hoping they'd show mercy. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Marcus came home with blood on his shirt. Not his blood, he was quick to tell me that, like it would make me feel better. Someone else's blood, from a kid named Tyler who'd apparently fallen during gym class. They're saying I pushed him, Mom. They're saying I'm violent. My hands were shaking. Did you push him? No. I swear, I didn't. Tyler was the one, he and his friends, he stopped, his face crumpling. Nobody's going to believe me anyway. The school suspended Marcus. 3 days, pending investigation. For aggressive behavior toward another student. Tyler, meanwhile, got a bandage on his elbow and was treated like a hero for standing up to his bully. I lost it. Completely lost it. I called the school, threatened legal action, demanded security footage. Mrs. Rodriguez told me, with that infuriating calm, that the gym cameras had been malfunctioning and there was no footage of the incident. It was Marcus's word against Tyler's and 3 other boys who all told the same story. Marcus served his suspension. I watched my son, my brilliant, gentle, kind son, sink into depression. He stopped eating properly. Lost weight. Stopped caring about the things he loved. And I knew I had to do something drastic. I bought Marcus a smartwatch for his 13th birthday in early December. One of those fancy ones with all the features, including a high-quality camera and recording function. I showed him how to use it, how to activate the recording with just a double tap on the side button. I'm not saying you should record everything, I told him carefully. But if anything happens, I want documentation. Can you do that for me? He nodded, something like hope flickering in his eyes for the first time in months. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Marcus had activated the watch camera during lunch. What it captured was 18 minutes of systematic torture. 3 boys, Tyler, Jason, and Connor, surrounding my son at his lunch table. Calling him names I won't repeat here. Knocking his food on the floor. and when he tried to leave, physically blocking him, shoving him against the wall. The audio was crystal clear. You could hear Marcus asking them to stop, saying please over and over. You could hear Tyler saying, "What are you going to do, cry to mommy again? Nobody believes you anyway, freak." And then you could hear the sound of Marcus hitting the ground when Tyler shoved him hard enough to knock him down. But the real kicker? In the background of the footage, you could see Mrs. Peterson, standing 20 feet away, looking directly at what was happening, and turning away. She saw it. She saw everything, and she did nothing. I took that footage to a lawyer first. Then I went to the school board. Then, when they tried to handle it internally, I went public. I posted that video on every social media platform I could find. I tagged the school district. I tagged local news stations. I wrote a detailed account of every single time I'd reported bullying, every time I'd been dismissed, every dramatic and sensitive comment they'd made about my son. The video went viral. Within 48 hours, it had 3 million views. News stations picked it up. Parent groups across the country were sharing it. The comments section was flooded with people sharing their own stories, their own children who'd been dismissed and gaslit and hurt. The school district went into crisis mode. They released a statement about taking bullying seriously and investigating the matter thoroughly. They put Mrs. Peterson on administrative leave. They offered to transfer Marcus to a different school with a formal apology. I said no. I wanted more than apologies. I wanted accountability. My lawyer filed a lawsuit against the school district for negligence and creating a hostile environment. The local news ran a full investigative piece on bullying policies in our district schools. Parents started pulling their kids out. The school board held an emergency meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez resigned. Mrs. Peterson was fired. The 3 boys who'd tormented my son were expelled, and their parents, who'd spent months claiming their sons were good kids who'd never do such things, suddenly had to face reality. But the best part? The absolute most satisfying moment of this entire nightmare? It came 3 weeks after the video went public. Marcus and I were at the grocery store, just trying to get back to some semblance of normal life. We turned down the cereal aisle, and there was Tyler's mother, Jennifer. She'd been one of the worst. One of the ones who'd cornered me at school pickup and suggested that maybe if Marcus toughened up and stopped being so weird, he wouldn't have such a hard time. Who'd defended her son viciously, insisting he was a good kid who'd never bully anyone. She saw us and froze. Her face went pale. And I watched, actually stood there and watched, as she tried to decide whether to speak or run. Marcus grabbed my hand and squeezed. I looked Jennifer dead in the eye, pulled my son closer, and said very clearly, he wasn't being dramatic. You just didn't want to see the truth. Then we walked past her like she didn't exist. Marcus started at a new school in January. A smaller private school with a strict anti-bullying policy and counselors who actually intervene. He's seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma from bullying. He's making friends, real friends who appreciate him for exactly who he is. Some nights, I still find him sitting quietly in his room, and my heart stops. But now, when I check on him, he's usually reading, or drawing, or researching something that fascinated him that day. The light's coming back into his eyes. Slowly. Painfully slowly. But it's there. The lawsuit settled for an undisclosed amount that will cover Marcus's therapy and his private school tuition through high school. More importantly, the school district implemented new bullying protocols, mandatory training for all staff, and a third-party reporting system so kids don't have to rely on teachers who might turn away. Will it fix everything? No. But it's something. It's more than Marcus had before. People ask me sometimes if I have any regrets about going public, about ruining those teachers' careers, about destroying those boys' reputations. I have exactly 0 regrets. Because here's what I learned: sometimes the only way to protect your child is to become the monster they think you are. They called me overprotective, helicopter parent, crazy. They called Marcus dramatic, sensitive, attention-seeking. They were wrong about both of us. And now? Now everyone knows it. My son wasn't dramatic, he was drowning, and I was the only one who heard him screaming for help. I'd burn it all down again in a heartbeat. Because that's what mothers do when the world fails their children. We become the fire. And we make damn sure everyone sees the light.